welcome to this evening's session, and I'm really hoping I'm not going to have a bit of the giggles in the middle of this, because we have seriously never had so many people, which is absolutely fantastic. Generally we invite, say, 30 to 35 people, and then we're probably half full at the absolute max, aren't we? But it's lovely to see you all, and I hope you're all quite comfortable, because I know you're probably going to get quite warm. So do feel free to move towards the door if you do feel hot. And I'm really thinking I am going to have a fit of the giggles, so I'm really sorry. Okay, so welcome to our talk on type 2 diabetes. And as I say, lovely to see so many of you here. This is a new thing that we've started doing within St Austell, because both Hayley and myself and Pat at the back there, I don't know whether any of you know Pat, we are all extremely passionate about diabetes. All right, and I have a new role within St Austell Healthcare. I'm a diabetic lead nurse. So this group of doing an education session is all trying to educate people to a higher level about what type 2 diabetes is and how you can help yourselves.
This is really not a good day.
And this isn't the first time we've done this, by the way, but I think this is probably the most technical pictures. Oh, that's it, thank you, Hayley, that's it. Okay, so you don't need to be able to read what it says on there, because a lot of people think, oh, I can't see. Is there another seat there?
There's one here, Esther.
Oh, there's one over here. No, there's one right over in the corner. If you don't mind being separated, I'm really sorry about that.
There's one person there. Sorry, guys. We've got lots more than we said. Do you want to stay here? But
Yeah, that's
no
it.
there. We have to help you there. You get some fresh air at least.
Okay, so this is the first slide, so you have missed nothing. Does anybody want to be brave and suggest why there's this slide very first off, to kick us off for the evening?
Because we used to eat berries.
Lovely, thank you. The lady at the back has been to my one of my clinics, I believe, haven't you? So maybe I might have said already.
No,
but she,
no.
You already know. Okay, so we're going back 100,000 years ago. There wasn't type 2 diabetes 100,000 years ago, and that's because our lifestyle environment was incredibly different to what it is today. So in order to get our food, we were hunter-gatherers, so not only did we eat very, very differently, meat, berries and nuts, we also had to expel a lot of energy in order to get that food. Okay, so we were driven by a part of our brain called our amygdala in order to get the calories. It's what drives you to find food, and 100,000 years ago it was really beneficial because it would make you want to get up, go and chase those hairy mammoths, and it would really give you the drive and the desire to eat. And when you have those calories, you produce dopamine, and we all like that feeling of eating. Unfortunately now, we still have that amygdala in our brains, and that's what, in some ways, why we can't help how much we eat in some cases. All right, so we've still got that desire to find the calories. Does anybody want to tell me what this picture is?
I can't see it.
Oh, it's on a Burger King, isn't it?
Yeah. Fast food.
Yay. I found my comedian great. There's always one, and I'm hoping that you all participate because it's lovely. All right, so this is an example of modern day. All right, so these people are sat in a car. They might be going to a fast food restaurant. Life is crazy now. We're all incredibly busy, having jobs which are quite sedentary, and we don't move around as much as we used to. The car takes us to places that we once had to walk to, and we are just eating the wrong things. Okay, so this is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but this is now an example of hunter-gathering, okay? So this is a modern-day hunter-gatherer. He goes around a supermarket. The supermarket is jam-packed with really nice food. Nice food that if you eat, your amygdala, you become addicted to it, you love the taste, and we've all developed certain tastes, and we won't accept things that don't taste nice. So supermarkets tempt us into all these choices, and we might think they're healthy in some cases, and in actual fact they're not. And you can, if you're anything like me, you might drive to the closest parking space, and then all going to admit to do that? Instead of no, nobody, just me. No, I do. Man at the back there. All right, so I park in the closest space I possibly can, and I pop out of the car. I might have burned a couple of calories just doing that, but actually I think I'm one step worse than that. Does anybody do internet shopping? Yeah? In fact, this very morning I did my internet shopping on my phone. it took me about 5 minutes to do because I do it every week and they save your shopping every time. I seem to buy the same things. And I doubt I burn even a calorie with my finger. So that's an example of modern day hunter-gathering, all right? Am I the only person that does internet shopping? Nobody say they do? Sometimes, yeah. And I think sometimes it's the only way to fit around a busy family working life. And certainly it was with me. I thought there's nothing in the fridge, I need something for tonight, so I pressed a few buttons. Okay, so this is really interesting as well. So go back 20 years, if you had a burger, for example, then you would expect it to be that sort of size, and there would be 333 calories in there. And then today's burger, it looks gigantic compared. There's 590 calories in there, so our portion sizes have gone up. We all expect to eat more with the meals than we ever have done. I'd be a bit gutted if I came out of McDonald's with that. I don't know whether anyone else would be.
Yeah, I did.
I'd probably have 5 of them, and I'd be alright then.
One's never enough.
No,
is
it's
it?
not, is it? Alright, so our expectations have gone up, what we expect. Our plate sizes have gone up. Okay, so now we move on to something slightly more technical. So we're going to talk about type 2 diabetes. So we know that type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle illness, and that's not pointing a finger of blame at any one person in the room, it's all of us. Okay, because we live in the environment that we live in and we're not burning the calories and we're sat down for a long time. I think I've been sat down probably for about 8 hours today, either in front of a computer or in a meeting. So I hate to think how many little calories I've burnt. Okay, so type 2 diabetes, very, very different to type 1 diabetes. They're completely separate things. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition, so your body attacks the pancreas and it stops producing insulin and you have to give insulin. Totally, totally different. Type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. Okay, so insulin is what helps to bring your blood sugars down in a roundabout way. I liken it to a bit of a key. It unlocks your cells so you can use the glucose in your blood for those cells. So what happens is, if you tend to put on weight around your middle, is there anyone in this room that will say that they're an apple shape and they tend to put on weight around their middle? Yeah. If you tend to have that genetic predisposition to carrying weight around your tummy, you are much more likely to be type 2 diabetic. And that's something you've not chosen, that is a genetic hand-me-down. So if you carry weight around here, I liken it to a sponge, okay? So if you've got weight here, the sponge sucks up the insulin so it doesn't get to the cells, so you can't use it to use the glucose in your bloodstream. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've also become insulin resistant, okay? And that leads to raised blood sugars, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about why I have my job in the first place and why it's significant, because actually a lot of you will probably say, even though you're type 2 diabetic, you probably feel very well. It's only when you become symptomatic and your sugars are really, really high, you'll realise that actually things aren't so great, and a lot of the time the damage is done by then. But I do constantly get people say to me, but actually I don't want to change my lifestyle because I feel really well. But it's not about the here and now, it's looking into the future and what you're going to be faced with later on if you do have these high blood sugars. Okay, so we've covered this one already. So the apple shape is far more likely to develop type 2 diabetes. There is a strange theory on this to do with evolution and how, as hunter-gatherers, an actually protective mechanism to be able to store your fat and to be able to survive when there was times of famine. Obviously we don't have times of famine in this country anymore, so it's not a particularly helpful gene. Pear-shaped are supposed to be more healthy because the different types of fats that are stored here, it's called visceral fats here, and that's the fat that's not very good. Okay, so this is an example of healthy food. Now this always prompts me to talk about fruit. Does anyone get really confused about fruit being diabetic? Yeah, there's 2 hands, only 2? Is anyone else going to admit to that?
Yeah, there seems to be contradictory writing in different.
Absolutely.
Some say you can eat it and others say you can't.
Yeah, and I must admit to having contradicted myself on several occasions when I've had people in my room. Because actually we weren't really quite sure about it, but we are now, okay? So fruit has sugar in it, okay, naturally occurring, and there's lots of really good things about fruit. There's plenty of antioxidants, there's plenty of vitamins that actually make fruit very healthy for you. But when you are type 2 diabetic, or type 1 actually, but type 2, you cannot handle sugar. And so there is sugar in fruit. and it's the tropical fruits that are actually going to send your sugars up. All right, so tropical fruits, you're looking at things that need the tropics to grow in, so your mangoes, your bananas, your oranges, pineapples, all the really lovely ones, oranges. You have to be very careful because they will send your sugars up. Okay? You look very depressed, but
Yeah, I like my fruit.
okay, so we divide it into two categories, your tropical fruits and the fruit that you can grow in this country. It's just a really easy way to remember it. So your apples, your pears and your berries, any sort of fruit that you can grow in this country, you can eat freely, all right? But it's the tropical fruits that will really blast up your blood sugars.
There's one exception to that. We grow grapes in this country now, don't we?
We do. They're not, it's not a
tropical,
natural.
really, though,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's not a natural environment. I'm
Yeah.
going talking about something that could handle the environment as it is, not in a polytunnel or
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
I was told that the smaller the fruit, the sweeter they are, i.e. strawberries.
Yeah, yeah.
Strawberries and raspberries.
I've had that too. Pat, have you had that?
Not really
So
about the
it's-
strawberries, but the grapes.
Yeah, berries. The latest research, or what we've read on, is the fact that all berries are absolutely fine.
Mm.
It's the tropical fruits you need to be careful with,
Right.
so bananas and such like. All right.
Strawberries are okay, are they?
All berries are fine.
Strawberries
Yeah.
are fine.
Okay, so this is just an example of your proteins, which keep you nice and full. There was a lot of stuff, you guys will remember, where they said you could only have, was it 3 eggs a week?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much been forgotten about now, and eggs are a good way to start the day, and they're a good way to fill you up. Red meat, eaten in moderation, plenty of oily fish. This is the way you're going to get yourself full up, all right? And we have now seen that it's not necessarily the proteins that are causing the problem with type 2 diabetes. It is the refined sugars and carbohydrates. Okay, so we're going to move on to the carbohydrates. in a
The
second.
milk in that.
Milk is good for you, but it does have sugar in it, okay? So you wouldn't want to go and have a big milkshake because that would push your blood sugars right up, especially if it had Nesquik in it. Am I going to get sued by Nesquik?
There's not a lot of sugar in milk, though, is there? I mean,
There is a fair, I don't know how much exactly,
It's
Hayley?
still a low sugar, still a low sugar.
Yeah.
It's under 5 grams, which is low sugar. So it's still got a bit of sugar, but it's not high.
Yeah, so there you go. Hayley seems to know the labels pretty well, don't you? So,
Yeah.
all right. So I've shown you this picture because this leads on to probably the biggest problem with type 2 diabetes and why we probably have the problem with it that we do. Okay, so this is a picture of carbohydrates. They actually look relatively good because we know that brown carbohydrates are better than white. Does anybody know why? Does anyone really dare to answer? No? Alright, so white carbohydrates such as your white bread, your white pasta, your white rice, are fast-releasing sugars, okay? So you'll eat it, your body will absorb it, and you'll get a great rush of sugar, okay? The brown carbohydrates are slower releasing, so they take longer to digest, and it takes longer for your body to actually get that sugar, and it keeps you fuller for longer. So with carbohydrates, if you possibly can, change from all of it to brown, even pasta and rice. It's a bit difficult to get used to, but once you're used to it, you will definitely get used to it. Now, I need a volunteer, and I need to have a very tall volunteer. I might have to pick somebody if you really can support.
am I tall enough?
You look small to me.
Oh,
Are you
he's tall.
Yes! Great! That's the only reason he came up, wasn't it, in the first place?
Sorry, I've just come from football.
No, you know, thank you very much for standing up. And actually this is a really good example, alright, because I wanted somebody that was really contrasting to my height. Because I'm only 5'1", how tall are you?
6'2".
6'2". Okay, so I want you to hold your hands up like that for me, okay? Oh,
Sorry, yeah.
that's it,
Sorry.
lovely. Okay. So I've got really little hands, and this gentleman here, what's your name? Mark, he's got much bigger hands than me, okay? This is a really good representation of carbohydrate size and how much should be on your plate. So Mark's a lucky man, because he's going to be able to have a lot more than me. All right, so a cooked handful, and I always say don't scold yourself in the process, a cooked handful of your rice or your pasta is more than enough of what you need, all right? I don't know, thank you very much, that's lovely. Do you know? Yeah, that's lovely, thank you very much. No, he wants to give the presentation now. Do you want to take over, Mark? So it's just a really good representation there. If you're looking for how many carbohydrates should go on your plate, that is a really good visual cue of doing it. And this also reminds me to talk about something that we found quite fascinating relatively recently. I don't know whether any of you have heard about if you cook your pasta, then you let it go cold, and then you reheat it. Has anyone heard about this?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone want to tell us why? It's actually better for you to cook the pasta, let it go cold, and then eat it. Hayley, I'm going to look to you because you're always better at explaining more than me. Why is that better for you?
Basically, it turns the carbohydrate into what we call a resistant starch, almost like a fibre, because fibre is a resistant starch, which means it slows the release of the glucose in our system. So it just makes it, it's not going to raise your blood sugars up as quickly. So we don't know, obviously we're not scientists, so we can't explain what happens in the molecular consistency of the food, but it changes it to be called a resistant starch. So it would be really, really, really much better for you to do that. And it actually, I think it tastes better.
Yeah, I think everyone thinks that the flavours are released better. I don't know whether you've noticed you've had a curry a day after, it actually tastes a lot better.
Yeah.
But that's probably why. Okay, so that's the best scenario. Cook it, let it go cold, reheat it. Don't do it with rice, because otherwise you get food poisoning and then you'll say the nurse told me not to do that. So don't know, it's pasta we're kind of talking about here. Okay, the second best scenario is to cook it and then let it go cold and eat it cold. And not the worst case scenario, because obviously what we generally will do is go home, cook our tea and eat it hot. But that you will get more sugar in that instance, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, and it's just a really handy tip of how you can avoid pushing your sugars up too fast.
You can also do it with porridge. I know it's not nice, but my grandpa used to do.
Okay.
Yeah, but my grandpa's dietitian said that the poor guy used to start eating it cold before they realised you can reheat it. But yeah, you can do that. I don't know how nice it will be, but you can.
That's really awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially as I'm just about to go on to talk about porridge. And we're going to be telling you that great amount of golden syrup I put in my porridge this morning you shouldn't be putting in. All right, so going on to porridge. Does anybody know why I've put this up as a slide?
It's supposed to be good against cholesterol, isn't it?
Okay, so it's good against cholesterol. Also, it is a slow releasing carbohydrate, so it keeps you fuller for longer. And what we said about the brown versus the white is a slower releasing sugar, so it doesn't make your body think that it's got to produce a load of insulin so quickly. So it is better, and it will not spike your sugars so fast. And in there would be a good example of how you could sweeten it naturally. And Hayley definitely will board of this joke. We think there could be a bit of brown sugar in there. We do not want you to have that, but we're going to pretend it's cinnamon, aren't we? But actually, interestingly enough, if you like cinnamon, it's a really good way to make things taste good. It tastes really good in porridge. I certainly like it. My husband doesn't, but it's a good way to make it tasty with a bit of berries on the top there. People often will choose porridge as a healthy option and then fill it full of sugar. Or if you buy the ready-made stuff, you think it's healthy, and then they've shoved a load of sugar in it, all right? So it really needs to be back to your basics, really.
Excuse me, is it talking about eggs
Yes.
for breakfast and porridge for breakfast?
Yeah?
Is there a better option, or are they really down to preferences, eggs or porridge?
Well, probably if you had a couple of eggs and perhaps something like an avocado or even a piece of grilled bacon, obviously not every day, you haven't got the carbohydrates there. All right, so that would be an excellent start. And in fact, I'm really glad you brought that up as a question because I was just thinking perhaps I should go on to that. That would be a really good way. So don't have the bread, but fill yourself up with your proteins and then you'll have your lunch. We have seen some startling results from reducing carbohydrates. Okay, we're not saying no carbohydrates, we're saying reducing carbohydrates. We don't actually have the research at our fingertips at the moment because they haven't done it yet. But what we have found, and I found in clinic, I've had at least 5 examples of people who have been ready to start insulin. Okay, so they've had all the oral agents they possibly can have. They've had all the input they possibly can have, and we've actually got to the point where they're sat in front of me with the insulin. And then we talk about lifestyle, and they say they want to give it a go. They're testing their own blood sugars because they're on various things that they need to anyway. And then the next week they come back, their blood sugars are so good because they've reduced their carbohydrates, I actually don't need to go on to start the insulin. In fact, we had a gentleman, didn't we, who attends your walk. Really great guy who came to speak at one of our conferences because we do social prescribing, which Hayley will tell you a bit about. And he was one of my examples of a patient who managed to do that, and he's not on insulin now. So that's absolutely and we're seeing more and more of it. Okay, so I also go into schools once a year. This isn't enough to talk to the children about healthy eating, and this is probably the scariest part of my role, really, because the amount of sugar our children are eating is absolutely ridiculous. And being a mum to 3 relatively young children, it scares me, and I'm pretty on the ball with it. So if I asked the children who would have those things for breakfast, I would say 80% of them to 90% would be having a sugary cereal in the morning to start the day. And I don't know whether any of you guys heard fairly recently the statistic, or it was a bit of research about kids and how they'd had, was it half of their daily intake of sugar, or was it a third, before they'd even stepped foot outside the door, because there was 3 teaspoons of sugar in the cereal that they're having, which is either half or a third of their daily requirement for sugar. And also, you know, probably a couple of years ago now, there was an article that came out that said an 8-year-old child has had as much sugar as an 80-year-old person. So, you know, here we are facing the epidemic of type 2 diabetes, because we really have got an epidemic of it. Where are our children going to be? It's quite scary. And it's very, very difficult to control what they're eating, even when you're on the ball with it. Especially when you're busy, especially because fast, you know, things that you think are healthy, pouring in sauces into food is not healthy, but we'll go on to talk about that in a minute.
Are there many children that are diabetic?
Well, I think actually
Or
I think there's only 2 in Cornwall, okay, but actually I find that really upsetting as it stands, because you would never have thought that children could develop type 2 diabetes, and these children are overweight, okay?
Right.
So it's habits that have been passed down the generations, and how people are taught to bring up their children, and that's why we're really quite keen to educate you guys as well, because it's perhaps more of a powerful tool than educating the children themselves, because you can go and feed back all the information to your grandchildren, your children. Alright, so there might be a few things that shock you on here. Special K makes out that it's healthy, it has got a lot of sugar in it. One thing to be careful of that Hayley notices, shredded wheat is okay, and Weetabix is okay, but shreddies aren't.
Shreddies are not.
No, the little shreddies, because they contain sugar.
Oh.
So the shredded wheat, the mini shredded wheats are fine, because they just like the big shredded wheats. But the shreddies still have a bit of sugar on them.
And those Weetabix and shredded wheat and porridge obviously are good examples of longer acting carbohydrates that aren't going to spike your sugars quite so quickly. And this again, I talk about the school kids again, because it was a scary example of how they actually expect their tea to consist of something from this. And when you look in their packed lunches, it's really scary. Because, and it's not blaming the parents at all, it's just become the culture, it's become a done thing, it's quicker. I mean, for goodness sake, it takes hours to prepare 3 packed lunches in the morning, it drives me nuts. But it would be much easier just to grab a packet of crisps, a chocolate bar, and something else in there. So it has become the norm. People expect to eat these things, and actually the things that are healthy don't taste that good anymore. I had an example actually, my son had to take in some food to share with his school friends, and so I started chopping up some vegetables, and he said to me, "Mum," he said, "people are going to think I'm a freak eating vegetables." And I thought, really, yes, actually that's such a good example of how it's perceived now. It isn't the norm to do that. He thinks his parents are complete freaks. They probably are. But unfortunately for my children, I'm married to Dr. Gray, who is also the diabetic specialist from the doctor point of view, so they have no chance today. All right, so
Poor kids.
I know, absolutely. I'm not that hard on them. All right, so again, I think we obviously know that there's sugar loaded, and it's fast-releasing sugar. Okay, so it's got nothing in it. So sweets are just going to go straight through your stomach, and they're going to go straight into your bloodstream and spike your sugars right up. The amount of sweets our children eat today is absolutely diabolical, and it has become the norm. Instead of it being a once-off treat once a week, it's become a daily thing. Again, I'm going to pick on my eldest son. He's just recently started playing out in our village. He's 11 now. And I don't have so much of a handle on him, because his friends will take pocket money to the shop, and the amount of sweets they buy, and it's not just the little bags, it's the big bags. I think we all know that fizzy drinks, is anyone going to say they didn't know that fizzy drinks are bad for you? What about diet drinks? Does anyone think they're a better alternative? Yeah?
Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi.
Okay, and do lots of people who diet drinks eat? Drink diet drinks?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright, because you think it's a healthy alternative. Okay, alright, if you were to measure your blood sugar before you drank a normal Coke, and then you drank one, it would go right up. And with the sugar replacement, it wouldn't necessarily have that effect. But I'm going to talk to you why it's bad for you. We'll come back to that. Don't let me forget that one. Send me back. All right, so I'm just going to finish on talking about the diet drinks rather than the full sugar equivalent. Some new research came out very recently to say that if you drink sugar replacement or use sugar replacements in anything, it sets up a bacterial reaction in your gut and makes you more likely to develop type 2 diabetes. And also, your brain cannot decipher between a sugar replacement and a sugar. The more sugar you eat, the more you crave it. I don't know whether anyone's noticed that. I definitely do. The minute chocolate.
Oh yeah, chocolate. Once you start opening a box of chocolate,
You can't, it's
you've
never
got to go.
enough, is it? It really is
Yeah,
never.
it's got to go.
Has anyone got the thing where you have one biscuit and you have to nearly eat
Yeah.
the whole pack? And even though you tell yourself you shouldn't, you can't help it. And it is natural to be like that. Your body has tasted sugar. You want those calories. It is instinctive in us. It's a survival thing to eat the calories, and your brain wants more and more and more of it. So when it comes to sugar, your brain cannot decipher between it, so you will then start to crave the sugary foods, the carbohydrates, and it will become impossible to lose weight because you won't be able to ignore those cravings. Cravings are a very powerful thing. I'm going to just whiz back to that orange juice. Today I had a gentleman come in who I was going to start him on some medication. And then probing a little bit deeper, he was having a carton of fruit juice every other day, which you would think might have a few years ago have thought was actually really healthy. We now know it's not. And the reason is, number one, it's orange, and remember we said about the tropical fruits, but it's a double whammy here because they actually, in the condensing process to make that into juice, you actually remove the fibre which is found in a naturally occurring piece of fruit. The fibre helps you break down the sugar. So you've not got that in anymore, so you actually in essence are just drinking pure sugar. So if there's one thing you can take away from today or change, stop drinking that. I should be very interested to see what happens in the next 3 months with the blood sugars, because I expect they'll go right down just by removing that one thing from his diet. So I'll read that one. Okay, so this is just about hidden sugars. I think we all know that in tomato sauce there's loads of sugars. And I'll go back again to when I went into the schools. I measured out sugar from various things. And I passed the bags of sugar around with the various food types. And they were things that people would eat on a very regular basis. And the kids were absolutely astounded about how much sugar there was in these things. I mean, the obvious things like the can of Coke or the big bottles of Coke, they had 13 teaspoons of sugar in. But I think we all know that. But I took around sort of less obvious things, or bread that was processed white bread, and they were able to pass it around and see how much sugar they were eating and put it in a pile, and it was actually very scary. In one biscuit, there's on average 3 teaspoons of sugar. So you might think, oh no, it doesn't matter that I've had 4 biscuits. Well, you've had quite a lot of sugar then. Okay, and again, you know, quite often I would whiz home from work and chop up a load of vegetables, cook a bit of pasta, shove one of those sauces in thinking it's a really healthy meal. Unfortunately, again, they cram a load of sugar in these things. So you have to take things back to basics. There's a book, and I think it's by Michael Mosley. Is it called You Can't Catch It, Pick It, or Kill It, Don't Eat It? We're not definitely advocating all of that, but what we're saying is take it back to the basics. If you can eat that, it's very possible you could put your diabetes into remission. But we are also quite realistic that it's hard to do.
Dr. McCrell told me some time ago
Yeah.
that if basically it swims, it runs, or it grows above ground, eat it, forget everything else.
Brilliant.
That's a good one.
So, okay, so that's exactly the same thing that we're trying to sort of reinforce. We definitely know that this is the case now with sort of, you know, face-to-face meetings of patients. We know that it works, and people are reducing their weight, they're reducing their blood pressure, they're reducing their blood sugars just by making these changes. So it's so important. Okay, so this is so boring. I must be the world's most boring person. I'm really sorry, but the only thing that I advocate that you drink is water or tea and coffee without sugar or sweetness. Now, I didn't put this on there, and I meant to. All the 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to do it. Alcohol. Okay. I am really boring, aren't I? I'm going to take away every nice thing that you've ever thought was great. Alcohol obviously is packed full of sugar. If you're diabetic, sugar you cannot handle. So obviously maybe the occasional glass is fine, but if you can reduce your alcohol intake, you could very easily do a massive thing for your diabetes and even put it into remission. Okay?
What about drinks like Guinness? That's supposed to be good for your blood.
Yeah, and again, alcohol, it's all sugar. It's gonna spike your blood sugars up.
Alcohol-free stuff.
I bet that's got sugar replacement in it.
Mm.
I'm not sure on the exact answer to that. I could look into it for you.
Alcohol-free generally is ordinary lager, the alcohol taken out, the sugar's left in.
Right.
That would make
So
sense.
yeah, absolutely. So
I need to say something here. Someone I know, or a couple of people I know quite closely, had the attitude that one past 2 weeks, they were diabetic.
yeah,
A past 2 week won't hurt. A couple of pokes a week won't hurt. Maybe fish and chip once a week won't hurt. They ended up with kidney failure and dialysis. One had his foot amputated. The other one had ulcerated legs. But one past 2 week won't hurt.
yeah,
A few fish and chips a week won't hurt.
yeah.
Only once. You've got a point there, but it does.
It absolutely does, and I think what we see is the results. I mean, it's my bread and butter. That's what I do. I don't do practice nursing anymore. I just see diabetics. Okay, and it's really quite stark, the difference between somebody, say 10 years on from my age now, if somebody isn't diabetic and has been healthy, the difference in their health is astronomical. You could have somebody who's not on medication, or somebody that's on loads, and it's all lifestyle related. But I don't want any of you to think I'm going away and preaching about this, because we all know it's really, really hard to make these changes. But that's what we're here for, is to try and support you to make those changes and realise how important they are. You know, you see patients, we see patients in front of us every day, so it's easy enough for us to see the effects of it. But when you don't, it's more difficult.
What about red wine?
So alcohol again, in type 2 diabetes, if you're diabetic, having those sugars are going to spike your sugars up, and that's what we don't want.
The toxin's supposed to be good for you then.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of research to prove that red wine is good for you, but when you're type 2 diabetic, if you took your blood sugar first and then had your drink, your blood sugars would go up. Once your blood sugars are down and perhaps you've put your diabetes into remission, you could maybe relax off ever so slightly. One of the consultants in the hospital explained it to me. What makes you diabetic is the calories. Once you're diabetic, it's the carbohydrates and the sugars that are the thing that are sending your blood sugars really high. Okay, so that made sense. For all of us, it's the calories, and Hayley will talk about that a bit more in a minute. This leads on to Hayley's going to talk just for sort of 20 minutes about exercise in a minute. But why am I droning on about diabetes? Because as I said, a lot of the argument, in fact, I had a gentleman on the phone today who I had to unfortunately tell him that he was diabetic, and he said he's definitely not because he feels really well. And I said, but you were, and he said, I'm definitely not, and that was it, end of conversation. And I think that's the problem really with it. I can understand where he was coming from completely, because majority of people feel very well. It's only when your blood sugars go really high you become unwell, and you get osmotic symptoms, or become unwell with thirst, or going to the toilet a lot, or really tired. But most of the time you feel pretty fine. Does anybody know why I've put this up here?
That's the pleasure.
Okay, so hopefully if you're diabetic in this room, you are having annual foot checks. It's really, really important. If you've got high sugars, it can lead to something called peripheral neuropathy, and that's why we check your feet, because once you've developed an area, a broken down area in your feet, it takes longer to heal, and it's much more likely that you will end up with an amputation. Does anybody know why I put that up? What do you think it represents?
It's heart attack.
Heart attack, okay. So when you have type 2 diabetes, you're much more likely to have a heart attack. We do something called Q risk. Has anyone had their Q risk done when they're in a face-to-face consultation? It's really, really striking. So you've got this calculator there with all your results in it, naturally just generates off the computer. If you actually press the button and put it so the person isn't diabetic, their chances reduce massively. I think I did it on a chap the other day, and his chances of having a heart attack or stroke in the next 10 years was 50%. Took away that diagnosis of diabetes and it went down to 20%. All right, so you can see how important it is. If any of you come into my consultations and want me to do that on you, that's absolutely fine. You probably will be running a mile now, won't you? Okay, does anyone know what that is?
Stroke.
Okay, so is that you're much more likely to have a stroke if you're diabetic. And this one? Blind. Okay, so hopefully again you all go for your annual retinal screening, and that's just because if you've got high sugars it can really affect the back of your eyes. So you have all those special tests just to make sure that you haven't got any problems. This one?
Dialysis.
Dialysis. Okay, so type 2 diabetes can cause real problems with your kidneys, and this is one of the things that might be underlying that you don't know that's going on. You know, you still feel really well until it gets too late. And that's the amputation that I was talking about there. And this is just an example of a healthy artery going down, and it's, if you look down, it's more and more flared up. And this is supposed to be really funny, but I need somebody to be brave and tell me what it is. It's especially...
Erectile dysfunction.
Thank you very much.
You're okay.
High five to the man at the back. All right, so it's an example of erectile dysfunction. So if you don't suffer with it already, the chances are, if you carry on with type 2 diabetes, you are going to suffer with it. And it's not a very pleasant thing, sort of jokes aside. And it can be quite difficult to talk about. There are things we can do about it, so please do bring it up at your next consultation if it's a problem. The rest of the women in this room will be celebrating. My poor husband. Alright, so this is quite depressing to finish on, but this is my last slide. Unfortunately, being diabetic makes it more likely that you will die young. So you can, if you reverse your diagnosis of diabetes, you can extend your life by a long time. Anybody got any questions on this section of the presentation?
What about, you said about feet?
Yes.
I've only been diagnosed just before Christmas, so I've
Okay.
never had my foot checked yet.
You haven't?
No,
Okay.
but when I'm laying in bed at night, sometimes my feet get quite uncomfortable.
Do they?
I mean, my left foot's been screwed together. I had an accident and it's almost screwed together.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just feels really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is that something I should be concerned about?
Well, you might have like beginnings of peripheral
I mean,
artery.
during the day, I mean, I'm up and about,
Yeah.
driving the truck, no problem. It's only when I lay still at night.
Yeah, it's quite possible. We probably need to speak to you on an individual basis
Right.
to establish there's a few questions you ask there
Yeah.
that would be a bit more personal there. But yeah, I mean, it could be related to diabetes, that's for sure.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got one. With the drinks you're having, well, what happens if there's someone who hasn't got a drink problem but they like to drink?
Yeah.
Is there any drinks that aren't quite so much sugar as some?
Hayley, do you know the answer to that?
They do say, like the gentleman said, that red wine would be slightly lower in sugar than white wine, and I think gin isn't quite, not that I like gin, but gin is slightly lower as a spirit. It is slightly lower, and I know there are certain beers, I can't remember which kind, but there are certain beers that are slightly lower in sugar than others, but all, like as you said, all alcohol it has. But yeah, red wine instead of white and gin instead of things like vodka would be slightly better.
Absolutely.
Well, soda water and a dash of lime usually.
What's that?
Soda water with just a dash of
Okay,
lime.
alright.
And lime's got sugar in
That
it.
sounds,
What
But
about
the
pretty
time of that,
healthy,
it
yeah.
it tastes nice.
yeah,
So
definitely.
what?
Yeah, okay, well that's great.
tonic water and cranberry juice? I drink both those.
Cranberry juice will be full of sugar, even if it says no added sugar. So you could make a simple adjustment by cutting that out. But no, I would say that's
Tonic
not
water's
really
okay.
good. What was the answer to that one, Hayley?
I was talking about diet ones, wasn't it? I think there's still sugar in
Yeah, because there is diet equivalents to tonic water. So somebody asked us that last time, and we said, well, if there's diet versions, then there must be sugar in the tonic water. So you just want to go for your plain. Unfortunately, I know it's really dull, isn't it? Anybody else?
So, canny really.
I think I've definitely stunned you all for minutes. Now I'm going to apologise because I have to leave because I've got childcare issues. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Hayley. Just to say, I hope you're all relatively happy with the new diabetic services because they have changed quite a lot. We're now calling you on your month of birth. You may have all realised that by now. So your annual reviews take place on your month of birth where you see a healthcare assistant. The healthcare assistant does all your checks, so your foot check, your bloods. The results come back, blood pressure, all that, come back to me at the moment or to Pat. We look at them and we make a decision on whether you need to be seen or whether your results are going to be sent along with the letter in a minute. That's not happened yet, but you will get a letter saying your results are good and that we will see you again in 12 months or 6 months depending on your results. But if they're not so good, we'll get you in for a face-to-face consultation. What we are finding is it's making appointments much easier. I know you all still, there's telephone getting through and stuff, but actually getting to see the right person is becoming a lot easier than it was.
What
So-
about if you've just been diagnosed? Because
Yeah.
you're calling me back earlier than that?
So, yeah, absolutely. So you may then become on a 3-monthly process. So the reason we see you after 3 months is to do with your haemoglobin, because the glucose sticks to your haemoglobin and that's what we're measuring. Your haemoglobin's replenished every 3 months, so that's why we check you every 3 months, okay? Otherwise you've got a hangover from the results before. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you're new to the process, we could be starting you on medication and we could be reviewing you after 3 months, or your control's not so good, then we would, and that all gets done automatically. We task our team and it
So
pops up.
I don't have to ring up for that?
No,
or-
it's whoever you saw at the time,
You.
me.
Yeah.
So it will have generated a task to our admin team and they have a little pop-up in 3 months and it says this person needs to come in for bloods and then your results come back to us. It's working really well, but you just need to bear with us for a minute because it's only been running for about the last 4 months. Has anybody got any questions on that before I buzz off and let Hayley take over? Sorry, Hayley. Anybody? Thank you very much. It's really lovely to see you all. I hope you haven't been too uncomfortable in the room. It's been quite hot and packed. Apologies for that. I think that was my over-exuberance inviting too many people at the last minute. But yeah, nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Well, like Esther said, thanks for coming to speak with us tonight. I'm going to talk about another lifestyle change that everybody could make, not only pre-diabetics or diabetics, but I think especially for people with diabetes or pre-diabetes, the second best thing you can do for your health is to increase your physical activity. So we're going to have a little bit of talk around why it's good for people, why it's specifically good for blood sugar, and possibly give you some ideas and hopefully a bit of motivation to get started, or maybe to re-engage in some activity. So, first one, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek before we get onto the serious stuff. So, just quickly, can anybody identify with this, if you can see this little bloke over here?
It's actually a photo of me.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so, as Esther said, we are living sedentary lives nowadays, and that is not a blame thing at all. We had the Industrial Revolution, and then we had the Technological Revolution, where we don't have to expend a lot of calories. Back in the day, like I said, in the hunter-gathering days, we had to utilise our bodies to get food, to make things, to do things day to day. Now, often, it's just at a touch of a button and things get done for us. So we are not as active as we used to be, and that's one of the reasons why diabetes is so rife today. So we are hoping to make people more aware of it and hopefully to get them active. So this little guy over here, sitting watching telly, dreaming of this active life. What we hope that we could get you guys to do is move from the sofa to the outdoors, so getting active, but it's easier said than done. So we're going to talk a little bit about it today. Alrighty, before I go into that one, we actually ask you before you see that. Can anybody tell me why it's good to exercise?
You burn off calories.
Perfect, that's the number one thing, 100% you do. So if we're burning off calories, can anybody say what health benefits, beside the calorie burn, which is probably the most important thing? Anybody else health benefits around?
Lungs.
Yes, brilliant, brilliant. So there are numerous health benefits, but let's just run through a couple of them in general, but also specifically for people with pre-diabetes or diabetes. So one person last time really started off with the mental health benefits, which is quite unusual, but there's physical and mental health benefits to getting more active. So if we burn in calories, we are going to be losing weight. If we are losing weight, we often feel better about ourselves, so our self-confidence and self-esteem gets better, so we feel better. We also often increase our energy levels, so our endurance and stamina grows, so our energy levels slowly rise, and we sleep better and feel better about ourselves. Our bodies work better, so our hearts and our lungs are working better. One of the big things for diabetes is blood sugars. So when we are exercising, we are utilising our muscles. If we're building lean muscle, our muscles actually take up the glucose at 20 times the normal rate. So what that's doing, it's lowering our blood sugars, even after the exercise, especially if we're doing what we'll talk about later, resistance exercises. So if you can imagine how your blood sugars are lowering. If our blood sugars are lowering, it's going to help our blood to flow better. So it's going to help our circulation, so it can help to prevent some of those complications, those blood vessel complications that Esther was showing you, those scary slides at the end. We can help prevent that by becoming active. They say that we can prevent up to at least 20 different health conditions from even occurring. But it's not only about prevention, it's also about maintenance. So sometimes we are living with conditions and we want to be able to live well. So it's about quality of life. So if we can manage our health conditions better, we can live better. So it helps our joints. So if we have any joint problems, if we are exercising and utilising our joints, what happens is in the joints we have something called synovial fluid, which is like lubrication. So like the WD-40 that you put on a squeaky chair. So it helps keep the joints moving a lot better. It's going to help our postures. It's going to help out the visceral fat, the fat around our middles, like Esther said. So if we are exercising and utilising these muscles, then you're going to reduce your waist circumference, which is one of the big problems with diabetes, as Esther said. We are also going to, like I said, make our muscles stronger, our bones stronger. So especially for us ladies, that's quite an important one. As we go through menopause and past menopause, what happens is we are more at chance of what we call brittle bone disease or osteoporosis, and that's just a naturally occurring thing. But if we exercise, what's happening is we're actually stressing the bone, and we actually can rebuild the bone slightly and make the bone stronger, so we can prevent things like osteoporosis. Our skin, hair and nails are a lot better, circulation is better, so the health benefits are numerous. So a lot of people know that it's good to exercise, but sometimes there are so many barriers to getting active. And what we hope to do is try and break down these barriers to make it easier for people, but it is still tough. But we want to hopefully make these health benefits a lot better than the negative side of the exercise to help people to become more active. So now hopefully you've got a better understanding about why we should exercise, but we also need to know how much. Because it's all good and well doing stuff, but how much should we do? So anybody can tell me how much exercise we should be doing every week.
As much as possible, I suppose.
That's great. That's actually I should write that. That's a good one. As much as possible, yes. But we do have some government guidelines just so that people know if they're meeting it. But yes, the more the better. Every step counts. So definitely, whatever you're doing, even if it's like what we call activities of daily living, so washing, shopping, cooking, walking around, visiting friends, all of that is going to burn calories. But obviously the higher intensity and the more we do, the better. But the government gives us the basic guidelines, and what they say is that we should be engaging in 150 minutes a week, which is basically 2.5 hours. We often hear, like the lady said, about 30 minutes a day, so they often equate it to 5 times 30 to make it easy. So if you're doing half an hour, 5 times a week of what we call moderate cardiovascular exercise, then you are meeting the guidelines to hopefully maintain your health. So cardiovascular exercises are what we used to call aerobic exercises, anything that's getting the heart and lungs working. So things like walking, cycling, swimming, those are all cardiovascular exercises. So if we're doing that, we're doing enough. but obviously more is better. You can actually do what we say vigorous exercise, so you could halve that, and you can only do 75 minutes of vigorous exercise. But the problem with vigorous exercise is the potential for damage to our bodies, so it's a bit of give and take. So I wanted to explain to you a quick, easy way to determine what type of, the intensity that you're working at. Because it's all good and well knowing moderate or vigorous, but what does that actually mean? They're just words. So, moderate physical activity is activity that's going to get you slightly breathless, start raising your heart rate, and maybe getting you breathing a little bit more laboured. And the way you can test that is doing the talk test. So if you guys are maybe walking with a friend or a loved one, give it a try. Go for a walk, and if you're walking along and you could sing a song to the person, you're definitely not working fast enough, because that's going to be light exercise, because you shouldn't be able to sing while you're walking. If you are walking and you can maintain a basic conversation, maybe not as quickly as I'm talking now, but if you can maintain a basic conversation with somebody, but you couldn't sing, that would probably be what we call moderate physical activity.